All right, moving on. Step into the Wayback Machine with me, and we'll take a look at today in history. It was kind of a slow day in history for this date, but there were a few things that happened. In 1787, the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia debated the first draft of the Constitution. My name is not Alexander Hamilton. 1911, the beloved comic actress Lucille Ball was born near Jamestown, New York. In 1945, Paul Tibbets, the commander of the B-29 bomber Enola Gay, dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan, which led to the quick end of World War II. In 1965, President Lyndon Johnson signed into law the Voting Rights Act, which outlawed the literacy test for voting in the South, for voting eligibility in the South. And in 1994, Tim Berners-Lee published the world's first website, info.cern.ch, and the internet was basically born. At this point, I'll turn it over to Gary. I'm going to mute the audio for everybody, and then you'll have the speaker, Mike, you'll have to unmute your audio to be able to speak, but I'll let Gary do the introduction here. Hang on just a second.
Okay, I had to unmute. So I want to welcome Mike Carmin. Mike, I contacted him the other day after reading one of his articles in the Lafayette Journal, and he was happy enough to volunteer to talk to us today. Mike is an award-winning writer for the Lafayette Journal and Courier for parts of 5 different decades. The 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and now into the 2020s. Mike, you're going to make it to the 2030s and 40s, right? We'll see.
I don't know if I'm going to make it till tomorrow. So
there you go. Mike began his career more than 30 years ago as a freelance reporter covering high school sports and Purdue women's basketball for the Journal and Courier, which led him to follow the Boilermakers on their way to the national championship in 1999. His coverage of that team won a national award from Gannett Publications. For 10 of the past 11 seasons, he also has been the primary reporter for Purdue football program, along with his duties covering the women's basketball program and high school sports. In the 2019-20 season, Carmin completed his first year covering the Purdue's men's basketball program. Mike received the Mel Greenberg Media Award from the Women's Basketball Coaches Association in 2012. Also been honored with the Corky Lamb Sports Writer of the Year by the Indiana Sports Writers and Sportscasters Association in 2019. So we're happy to have Mike here with us today, and I'm sure there's probably no news in the Big Ten or anything. So I don't know what Mike's going to talk about today, but Mike, thanks a lot.
Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me, and I'm glad I had the time to jump on Zoom. As we've all learned in the last 4 or 5 months what this Zoom thing is all about, and it's become a godsend to be able to meet and talk and still interact with people. Otherwise, I'm not sure what we would all where our mental state would be right now. But I appreciate Gary asking me. He wanted me to touch on a couple of topics. One, just kind of the state of college sports right now. And if you followed things yesterday, the Big Ten did announce its 2020 revised football schedule, which does give some hope to maybe playing some of the season, all of the season. There's still a lot of questions and doubt whether anyone in college athletics can get this done. And also yesterday, since most of you, I assume, live in Crawfordsville, and Wabash College had already kind of canceled its fall season, but Division III from the NCAA also canceled its fall championships yesterday, along with Division II. So the only fall championships right now that are scheduled to continue would be Division I, but I think that decision is expected to be made sometime later this month. It'd be hard for me to see them proceeding forward based on what they did yesterday, but a little bit more money involved in Division I than Division II and Division III. So you have a lot more at stake. But you know, I can't sit here today and tell you whether Purdue's going to start the season on time on September 5th. I don't think nobody can give you that answer right now. I mean, it continues to be a day-by-day thing, whether that can happen, and even if you start on September 5th, can you finish 10 games by Thanksgiving, based on the current climate of the COVID, not only in Indiana, but when you look at the Big Ten footprint, which stretches from Nebraska to Maryland and includes Rutgers, which has been a hot spot for positive cases, and then Michigan and Pennsylvania, and you go all the way through. We could probably see some early cancellations of games. I think Nebraska is now scheduled to go to Rutgers in a month. Do they allow that to happen? Does Rutgers allow Nebraska to come there? And can Rutgers go out and travel somewhere else in the Big Ten? Now there is strict testing that's going to be involved in all of this to make sure that the athletes and the coaches and any support personnel have negative tests. But to me, the one thing, kind of the next thing to watch whether this can happen is football training camps are starting today or tomorrow, depending on when you play a game. And once players start interacting with each other and actually practicing football, that means contact with each other. What happens after that? And what happens with testing? And do positive tests come out of those interactions? And if you have a substantial number, at what point do you have to pause your workouts and quarantine? And there are strict guidelines now from the Big Ten and the NCAA regarding how long you have to isolate, how long you have to quarantine, how many tests you need coming out of quarantine to be able to get back into the flow of things. So it's really a fluid situation. I'm sure everyone has an opinion whether sports should be played during this time or not. As you know, the professional leagues are trying it. As of right now, it appears that if you're in a bubble like the NBA and the NHL, you're able to conduct your business without having to stop things, where baseball hasn't stopped its game yet, but they postponed several games and even adjusted their rules to be able to try to get this season in. So, it's how far do you want to go to play these games? And there is a lot of money on the line at all levels. And the baseball owners seem determined to try to get to the playoffs so they can get a big payday out of that. But, baseball also may be on the other side of this too, where the positive cases may go downward as players learn to deal with it a little bit better than what they did initially. I don't know how much everyone follows that, but when the Miami Marlins were the first team to get a lot of positive tests, well, it came out that they were at a party or out in the community in Florida, which is a hot spot, and things just kind of got out of control. And it trickled from one team to the next to another team. And, it's probably not a classic breakout yet, but there's been talk of, postponing the season or canceling the season, but it appears they have it under control a little bit. And with college athletics, there is a lot of money at stake. If you keep up on how college athletics work, a bulk of the money comes from TV contracts and media rights. And when those games are not played or not shown on TV, the schools cannot get paid, or they won't get paid, or they're not scheduled to get paid. It doesn't mean they won't work out some sort of agreement with the TV networks. But, in Purdue's case, they are scheduled to receive probably in neighborhoods of $56 million during this fiscal year from their media rights, which is along the line of all the other Big Ten schools. But if those games don't get played, they don't get shown, Purdue's not going to get that money, and therefore they'll have to do some finance tightening within the athletic department to make things work. They still have bills to pay. Everybody has bills to pay, and Purdue's no different. So like 2 years ago, Purdue's payroll just in the athletic department alone was around $41 million. That's from coaches to everybody that works in the athletic department. And if you're not getting revenue from the TV rights or even ticket sales, some things have to be adjusted and some changes have to be made in order to kind of meet the budget. The world continues, and you still have to do things even in the pandemic. So it's really hard to say today what's going to happen in a month or next week. It's truly a day-by-day thing when it comes to college athletics. But I would also like to touch on, if, let's say, we do have a season and what that means for Purdue right now. They have a lot of talented players coming back on the football side of it. Rondell Moore, the talented receiver, scheduled to be back. I'm pretty sure he will be back. David Bell, who came on last year as a receiver, had a great year, ended up being Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Those are two guys I think are recognizable names if you follow Purdue football as well. And I think those two are probably poised to have another big year. And the one thing I'm interested in watching with this team is David Bell and Rondell Moore on the field at the same time. I really think that's, not to get too sports technical here with you, but when you put those two guys on the field, you got to defend both of them. And I'm curious how defenses are going to do that. And last year they were only on the field together 96 plays, which is not a lot. Typically in a college football game, teams run between 75 and 80 plays in a full game. So those two were only on the field for 96 plays because Rondell Moore got hurt in game 4 and missed the rest of the year. Purdue will have a quarterback battle on its hands because they've added a graduate transfer from UCLA, Austin Burton, and that he'll be battling with Jack Plummer, who was starter most of the year last year when Elijah Sindelar got hurt, and also Aiden O'Connell, who was a walk-on and came in and helped win a couple games in November. So you're going to have 3 guys competing for that position. Purdue has made some changes defensively with its coaching staff. They have a new defensive coordinator with Bob Diaco, who used to be the head coach at Connecticut and was the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame for a number of years, and how he moves around the personnel and how he, in his system is going to be a key part of this year, because in the past Purdue's just given up too many big plays and they need to limit that. And there's also some fundamental things that need to happen there on the defensive side. So I think there's reason to be optimistic about where the Purdue football program is at and what it might be able to do this year if they do, if they're able to have a season. But the schedule, if you saw it yesterday, doesn't do Purdue any favors out of the gate. I mean, they're going to open at Michigan, a place they hardly win at, and then they host Iowa, and then they get Ohio State in a home game. Now, for whatever reason, Purdue does play well against Ohio State for the most part at Ross-Ade Stadium. If you remember the game 2 years ago in 2018 with the whole Tyler Trent, the Purdue student who was battling cancer, and Purdue was able to win that game by 29 points and really put itself on a national stage. And I think in the last 9 meetings, Purdue has beaten Ohio State 4 times, maybe 5 times, and that's kind of unheard of. It's just one of these series that seems to go Purdue's favor. But Purdue has a really, really difficult schedule to start out with. If they can get through that, get through September, and get into October and have a chance to maybe win a few more games at that point. And with a 10-game season, I know getting ahead of ourselves a lot when you talk about bowl games, if there's going to be any bowl games, the NCAA has said that in a 10-game season, you still have to be 500 to qualify for a bowl game. So Purdue would be aiming to at least get 5 wins to qualify. But doesn't mean there'll be a bowl season outside of maybe the college football playoff if we get that far. So there, I think I think Jeff Brom's done a good job in 3 years. Last year they were 4-8, but had a lot of injuries to key personnel. I still think the program's kind of it's moving up. He's recruited very well, but now you got to turn those recruiting results into on the field performance and get some more wins. But this is going to be an odd year just for everyone because of what's going on with COVID, and it's going to eat away at some preparation with some teams, and you just kind of have to sit back and see how things play out if they even get a chance to do all that. Gary also wanted me to touch on basketball a little bit. They didn't have a great year last year. They were up and down. They finished 16-15 and really struggled on the road. I think they had a lack of leadership across the roster. They just had some other struggles where you didn't have the Carson Edwards type of player to step up and carry you through a game. They had a lot of players who hadn't played a lot in different roles when they were supporting roles the year before. Now you're into a starter type role, and it was just, I think it was a transition year for Purdue. And I think the one thing no one has really talked about is basketball season, whether we're going to have one or not, because everyone's been so focused on football. But basketball, I think has a chance to get played, but again, it may not look like it has in the past. They'll probably go to a schedule that features all conference games, similar to what the Big Ten has done in the fall. But with Purdue, I think they have some good players coming back. Travion Williams is the center. He needs to take a step up and play longer in games, stay out of foul trouble, and be more productive. But they lost Matt Harms to a transfer to BYU. They lost Nojel Eastern to a transfer. He is not. I think he was supposed to announce where he's going to transfer today. So they lost 2 key players, but I think the nucleus they have coming back should set them up for a pretty good basketball season. I like their recruiting class. Ethan Morton is a point guard from Pittsburgh, big guy. Matt Painter's already called him the best passer he's ever recruited, which has upset some of his former players, Dakota Mathias being one, that they would say that even before playing a college game. But I think that kid has the skill to be a really good player at Purdue. And the other one to watch is Jaden Ivy, kind of an athletic wing player who can get to the rim, make plays when the offense breaks down. And to me, that's a big key in basketball. You just can't be stagnant, and you just don't run plays all the time. You need guys to break out of that and make some plays, and to help you win games, or at least put away games at some point. So, that's kind of a nutshell, what I have for you right now. Happy to answer any questions if you have any. But, we're still kind of in limbo with college sports and what's going to happen. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Hey, thanks, Mike. Couple of things that I'll bring up right away. Jerry and I were talking earlier that the NCAA commissioner was on the Today Show this morning. And one of the things he talked about was that there's players that are, they'll have the right to not play and still keep their scholarships and everything going. Do you see anybody at Purdue who is already talked about not playing or anything like that?
As of today, no. I'm sure some of them have thought about it. But as of today, and we talked to Jeff Brom yesterday, the head coach, and he said that he had not been approached by it, but he's aware that situation could come up. In the Big Ten already, I believe there's going to be 4 players that are going to opt out, and 2 of them are going to opt out just to prepare for the NFL draft. And I think the other 2 are just taking a redshirt year. And I think the number in the NFL is around 60. Right. The deadline is today. But yeah, if you do opt out, you're supposed to retain your scholarship. and your team standing. But there's a caveat to that because no one knows what's going to happen in the future with roster limits, scholarship size. You know, if you opt out, that you still get your scholarship, but someone still has to pay for that. That's still being funded by the athletic department. Are they going to have enough money in a year to fund everybody that has opted out? They should. And if they're going to stay true to their word, then that shouldn't be a problem. But we'll see as this thing, as we move along in the next couple of years, how that all unfolds.
And what about attendance? Are they going to, at Ross-Age Stadium, they going to allow people to attend?
The last that I was told, it was going to be 25% capacity, but that was a couple months ago, and I don't, whether things have changed from that standpoint, I don't know yet. I am talking with the athletic director tomorrow, so he may provide some clarity on that. But Penn State announced today it will not hold any fans in its football stadium or for any of its sports. Other schools have done the same thing, which opens up another discussion in my mind. It's like, well, if it's not safe for fans, if you're not going to put fans in the stands, why is it safe for players to play the game? Right. And it gets back to the financial part of it and trying to get on TV and get that money. But I think Ohio State has said 20%, but their governor the other day is saying no fans at any stadiums as of early August. But everyone knows these things can change, and maybe if they get through a full season, maybe early on you don't have fans, but by October, if things are going well with the virus and health departments allow it, you could see fans. But as of right now, I think Purdue's looking at 25%. And the fact that the Indy 500 is not going to have any fans,
right? I'm
curious what impact that will have here in the state with Notre Dame, Indiana, and Purdue.
Right. I heard, I think the last question today on the Today Show to the NCAA commissioner was from that Craig Melvin, and he says, "Is it really worth it?" And that's got to be a tough question for that the NCAA head to answer. Is it really worth it?
Well, to me, there's two questions in that. Is it worth it from a health and safety standpoint? Is it worth it financially to do it?
Right.
No one wants to lay off anyone. No one wants to furlough anyone. Purdue's athletic department case, I firmly believe that, he's trying to do everything he can to keep people employed, because therefore you help the economy. You're not hurting your local economy when, if you have to lay off people. So, while we hear a lot about greed in college athletics and the high salaries and all that is true, and it needs to be addressed, I do think deep down in this situation, schools are trying to keep people employed as much as possible because of the overall big picture.
Okay. Anybody else questions? Bud and Jim, I'm sure you guys have questions.
Well, you answered a lot of asked a lot of my questions. I was wondering, since I'm a season ticket holder, whether I would get to see a game or not.
That's still up in the air. It may depend how many tickets you have too. If you have, I do know early on they talked about if you had 8, 10 tickets, they may ask you to reduce down to 2 to make sure all season ticket holders had a chance to go to a game, if that's the option they decided. So there's a lot of variables, and with mobile ticketing now, you can make decisions later. You're no longer going to have the printed tickets that they used to put out. Everything will be done over your phone or your mobile device. So they can push this up a little bit further if they have to. But I would just you have to stick by. And the other question, how many fans actually want to go inside a stadium with 15,000 other people? I mean, I'm a Chicago Bears season ticket holder, and I'm not sure I want to go to a game just because I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know how many people are going to be around me. There's just too many unanswered questions. So, I mean, I think fans have legitimate questions. There'll be some that want to go no matter what because they want to experience it. They want to do all that. But I think there'll be a majority of people just say, I'll pass this year.
I think, am I on?
Yes.
I think that it also hurts the school because the giving to the John Purdue Club and the Alumni Association, I'm sure, is substantially down. And I think that impacts the whole school, not just athletics.
I think giving is probably down, although, there are people that step up in tough times to kind of help. And at Wisconsin yesterday, they announced a campaign to try to get some of their donors to help keep people in the athletic department going and to help fund their overall budget. I mean, if there's no football season in Wisconsin, their athletic director has said they could lose upwards of $100 million. And that's real money. That's real money that goes, and a lot of the money that comes into athletic departments, while there's a big focus on football and men's basketball, those sports also fund volleyball and women's basketball and baseball and softball and their scholarships and their ability to go baseball team to go 4 straight weekends and play in Texas and Florida and North Carolina and so on and so forth, and also for the softball team to go play in warmer climates in the spring, and the track team to do whatever they need to do, and you're funding sports medicine stuff and equipment and all that kind of stuff. So without a football season or men's basketball season, the trickle down effect is huge. But that's when they try to rely on donors to maybe push and help get them through it.
Mike, if the fall season falls apart, do you know if there's been any discussion among the Big Ten about maybe having a spring football season?
I think they have probably discussed it. I don't think they want to go there. I think that is a last resort type of thing. And a lot of it may depend on what they can get out of the fall. Let's say you're able to play 4 games in the fall. Well, then you try to get the other 5 or 6 played in the spring if possible. I just think that's probably going to be a logistical nightmare when you're still trying to play the other sports, assuming you can. And I do see that as a last resort type of thing. And to me, that would be the ultimate. We need to have that money. We need to have that TV money. So we're going to go play in the spring to get it. I think the number one objective is to do what they can in the fall to make it happen. And if they can't, they'll reevaluate at that point. And you got a whole lot of other things that would go into that. You'll have players opting out because they're eligible to go in the NFL draft. So you would lose a lot of your stars if they were in that position. A guy like Rondell Moore, who's already said that he was going to play 3 years in college and then go to the NFL, which he's on track to do. But if they move the season to the spring or play any part of the spring, he won't participate because he's going to get ready for the NFL draft. So you would lose a lot of players, I think, from that standpoint.
I know this is not a sports question, but do you know if Purdue is still planning on holding in-person classes? Mitch Daniels made a statement about that early on that they were going to be in person. Is that still true?
Yeah, they're still on that track, and they're going to give that a try. Every student has to be tested before they have to test negative before they come back to campus. They have to have that on file, and then the testing part, I believe, is if you show symptoms, then you need to get tested. I don't believe they're going to test everybody once they get on campus. But if everyone shows up with a negative test, that should help. But as we all know, college kids being college kids, and we were all college kids at one time, what happens the first weekend? They're going to go out and do stuff. They just are. And Purdue's tried to come up with this Protect Purdue pledge type of thing where you're looking out not only for yourself, but for everybody else. Nice idea. We'll see if it actually gets pulled off. Because we've already seen across the country large gatherings of college kids, large gatherings of young adults who seem not to have a regard for this whole thing. And that could be the outbreaks of outbreaks would be on college campuses when it comes to positive cases. And then your athletes are going to interact with the student body. So what happens then? I don't believe you can put college athletes in a bubble like you do with the NBA or the NHL. To some degree, it would work because you could do it with online classes, but you can't. I don't think you can go that far yet.
Jerry, I'll make a comment. My son's going to be a sophomore at Purdue this year, and he got his test, and he did his spit test yesterday, and I mailed it off yesterday. So we'll see how that comes back. But yeah, he moves into his fraternity on the 19th in a couple of weeks. So
I hope there's no fraternity parties planned.
Oh, I'm sure there's not.
Well, the best ones are always the unplanned ones anyway.
That's right. That's right.
Bob, just a quick question. Did your son's test go to Purdue or did it go to another lab?
No, it got mailed off to New Jersey. I assume to a lab in New Jersey.
They're working with Rutgers in this. They're working Purdue and Rutgers and the organization. I mean, they're working together to get these tests evaluated and turned around in a quick fashion.
Yeah, they told us 2 to 3 days he should have an email response result.
The reason I asked is I thought I had heard something about Lilly doing testing or something at Purdue or for Purdue. So that's the reason I asked.
A lot of the Purdue testing is done on campus. I think when the athletes have been tested since early June, I think they're being sent off to the veterinary hospital, and they're able to turn those results around pretty quickly. I mean, as you know, if you watch the news, getting test results seems to be an issue in some parts of the country, at least getting timely test results turned around quickly, where, you hear stories of 8 to 10 days, which, really can't happen. I think at that point, it doesn't do anybody any good then.
Any other questions from anybody else out there? Well, hearing none, Mike, thanks for taking the time to speak to us today. It was very interesting. I know we're all hoping for the best for the fall, not only for Purdue, but for all Division I athletics. I think we're all starving for something to watch live. So it's been very interesting. Again, thanks for being with us.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and hopefully provided some knowledge to you or something you didn't know before. But anyway, thanks. Everyone have a good day, and continued success with the Kiwanis, and hopefully you guys get back to meeting in person, and would love to come to a pancake breakfast.
Great.
We'll take you up on
So
that.
much, Mike.
All right.
Do you want to buy some
Thanks,
tickets?
Mike.
Pardon?
Do you want to buy some tickets?
Well, when's the event?
Just
Well,
kidding.
You may not have it, but you can buy tickets.
You don't deliver, do you?
Well, we could.
Not yet. We actually talked about maybe doing a delivery or a pickup kind of thing before we decided we couldn't pull it all off. But anyway.
I got a truck. If you want to use the back of my truck, I could help in that regard.
There you go.
All right. Thank you.
Our speaker next week is going to be Brad Montz from the Hoosier Heartland State Bank. I'm not sure what Brad's going to talk about. I suspect the renovation of their headquarters building and that sort of thing. So we'll find out. Closing thought for today. be the reason someone feels welcome, seen, heard, valued, loved, and supported. And with that, we're adjourned. Have a good week, everybody.